Now, despite just how heated the conversation was a few minutes ago here, it's actually a cold and chilly morning. And someone might joke and say it's baby making weather. Speaking of baby making, on the 15th of October 2022, the world, joined by Uganda, officially celebrated the 8 billionth child. And this exactly 11 years after the 7th billionth child. Now, you might ask, who's counting? The UNFPA is. Why? Because with an increase in population comes an increased need for more resource allocation and more opportunities. It is, after all, a world of infinite possibilities. Today we're going to be talking about one such opportunity, and that is employment, under the theme for today's conversation, which is decent employment and positioning young people in a world of infinite possibilities. This is linked to the SDG 8, which is economic growth, employment and decent work. And joining me to have this conversation from the International Labour Organization, a labour economist, Abdel, Malik, Mohammed. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much, Kyo, for having me in your show. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Now, when we talk about youth in Uganda, we've got about, for instance, 9.3 million youth, and about half of these are not in education, training, or employment. That's a very huge percentage. So when we talk about the conversation on unemployment, it's a very critical one for us to have. One of the most important opportunities that have been presented to the youth of Uganda especially is employment abroad and in other regions, because many opportunities have been provided globally. Let's start by talking about that. There's been an increased fear of trafficking of young people in search for jobs. And this is not just for young people in Uganda, but young people in Africa as a whole. Are there standards that are followed to reduce exposure of young, unemployed youth?
Yeah, I think, let me also thank, UNFPA, for organizing, this event. I think this 8 billion point is extremely important for many, countries, individuals, and UN entities, and ILO is one of them, because we also, monitor the labor market statistics, which brings elements of employment as part of the wider discussion. So let me first start also highlighting or mentioning that the ILO, with some support from the European Union, has recently provided some assistance to Uganda Bureau of Statistics to work on the Uganda National Labour Force Survey, which has been disseminated a month ago. So that labor force survey provides a range, a comprehensive, indicators, labor market indicators, which tries to measure, the labor market trends and dynamics in Uganda. This includes youth employment. So back to your question, I think, one of the, major wealth Uganda has is its own people.
Absolutely.
Which includes, youth. And as you have rightly mentioned, the population, the youth population in Uganda is 9.3, million. And this trend is also increasing. This, youthful population is increasing dramatically.
Absolutely.
So I think when we talk about this youth, the current status quo of this situation, the statistics are really worrying when you see not only when you see, for instance, the youth unemployment rate has been increasing. It is 17% in Uganda right now, which is higher than the unemployment rate for the adult counterparts, for instance. And that has implications on the participation of youth in the labor market and in the education system. Because, they are saying, look, if there are no jobs in the labor market, why are we, I mean, participating in the education? Why are we going for trainings?
Why go to school?
Why are we going to the school?
Yeah.
So this is, I mean, a critical, I mean, question. And this is not something similar to Uganda. It cuts across in the region, the continent, the African continent, which is, I mean, which has been generating the most, I mean, youthful population for the last 30, 50 years. So having said that, I think, I mean, Uganda has that supply of people who are capable to, I mean, contribute the growth of the country, the development of the country. But the question is, do we have sufficient employment opportunities for those people? And the question is no. That's where, I mean, decisive policy actions are required to not only to, I mean, to find employment opportunities for our youth outside Uganda, but also to see, I mean, what are, I mean, some other opportunities here, so that, I mean, they don't move and transition to countries outside, I mean, Uganda. And just to be brief, I mean, ILO in its own constitution, which has been, I mean, developed in 1919, it clearly indicates specific provisions which safeguards, I mean, the interests, the dignity of migrant workers, including youth. And there are international standards which are followed. So we call it international labor standards for ILO, which promotes, I mean, the youth, I mean, opportunities outside their countries. And then there are also specific conventions which have been developed, discussed within the International Labour Conference of the ILO that primarily promotes, I mean, the rights of migrant workers, including youth. So these are some of the, I mean, key elements governing the migration, specifically for youth, beyond their own, I mean, countries. And I think also there are other, I mean, international also conventions which are either developed by other by the UN or other international organizations. Mm-hmm. So all those are relevant. So, but the key issue again is that we have an international framework which promotes or protects the migrant workers, including youth. Mm. But the issue is, are they enforced? Are they implemented? And this is exactly what we see when you are traveling outside Uganda and you see so many people going to the Gulf countries and seeking better employment opportunities. So, I mean, the issue is how should we, I mean, promote the rights to work and the rights at work for those people who are going outside the country.
Okay, so you've talked about these standards existing and, of course, being implemented on the international scene. As a representative of the ILO here in Uganda, do you feel like they have been implemented locally? When we talk about trafficking, not just to outside or global opportunities, but even here locally, do you feel like these standards have been implemented well enough on the Ugandan labor market?
I mean, these labor standards have been implemented in Uganda because, I mean, Uganda has already ratified most of those, I mean, conventions and recommendations. So I strongly believe that, I mean, there has been a great, I mean, progress and achievement made so far locally. But the key issue is, I mean, the implementation of those standards have to also take place outside Uganda, meaning that, I mean, for those who are going outside the country, their rights should be protected wherever they are. So, and that requires the government of Uganda to have bilateral, I mean, agreements and discussions, I mean, with those countries those countries that are receiving Ugandan, I mean, youthful workforce. So, and I believe that is, I mean, a work which is ongoing, and progress has already been made on that.
Superb, superb. We are joined by a representative from the National Planning Authority who is coming to talk to us. Of course, it's important to see the angle from the International Labour Organization, which oversees labor all across. But even here in Uganda, we should be able to set up certain facilities, standards, and to enable our own youth, especially when we're talking about employment. So join me in welcoming Dr. John Ssekamatte, who's a consultant from the National Planning Authority. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll start you off with questions. There's no, there's no moment to breathe. You just found Mr. Mohammed and myself talking about the unemployment rate, especially for youths in the country. When you talk about half of the youth, almost half of the youth of the country being either not in education, employment, or training, that's a very huge percentage, and it brings a great deal of questions. So starting with the country and what it has, what can the country prioritize to prepare young people to harness the available opportunities, especially in a world of 8 billion? Because we're talking about infinite possibilities, infinite opportunities. What can the country do to prepare the youth for this?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a very important question. It's a very important topic. As you said, the situation of unemployment or idleness among the young people is alarming.
Absolutely.
Now, what we need to do is we must make sure that these young people are prepared. Now, of course, it's an emergency, but we should not scramble for the exits because we'll do more harm than good. We should take a deep breath and plan. Now, one of the very big prerequisites is education. We need a good educational base. And we also have to realize that there is a big difference between education and skills, or education and skilling. Now, many people have talked about skilling our young people, but just paying lip service. Because when you say skilling, you must be imparting skills on a skillable population, on a skillable group. And they will be skillable if they have some minimum level of education. So we really need to invest in education to make sure that our young people go to school and they stay in school until completion. Now, there are a lot of challenges there. For example, we will be told that we have UPE, we have USE. Now, there we are just talking about the direct costs of education, the school fees. But there are a number of other costs that parents and guardians meet to make sure that these young people go to school. And those other costs are prohibiting to the poor people. So, if we really want an inclusive development move, we have to make sure that all of these disadvantaged youth have access to education by making it completely free, eliminating all those other invisible or hidden costs to education, which are barriers to education.
Absolutely. Now, when you talk about education, it's a very broad spectrum. We're talking about not just schools, conventional schools, but we're talking about things like vocational training as well. Now, despite there being vocational trainings and all of these enrollment in business technical schools and all of that, there still remains a very low, the youth lack skills for the current job market. What's the government doing to ensure that the young people entering the job market have the required skill set for the current job market here in Uganda, for example?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it is a bitter reality. Most of the jobs that people would do that are available, for if you are looking for employment, you need some kind of skill.
Absolutely.
And that skill is not just, met accidentally in the street or casually. So you have to really invest in that kind of skill. So again, as I said, we have to take first things first. The question we have to ask, do we really know what skills are needed in the job market? So we need a skills profiling, to say those are the kinds of skills that our economy needs.
Specific to the Ugandan.
Specific to the Ugandan market, to the Ugandan economy. We've just had a labor force survey, about, I think, probably 3 or 4 years ago. And you know, the findings there are very disheartening, that you find just about 10% of the young people have the skills that the market needs or wants. Now that should be a very big eye-opener. So we should take findings of surveys like that, or carry out other surveys to ask ourselves, what skills does the market actually want? And then we make arrangements to make sure that we impart those kinds of skills. Not in a firefighting mode that, oh, there are so many young people who are rowdy, so please, let's take them to some room and impart some skills. But a concerted program where we are saying that we need so many of these people with such a skill, so many with such a skill, so that we have a program going forward that is highly focused, that is well-resourced, but most importantly, that is result-oriented.
Absolutely. Now, you talked about the youth who are idle, and it's a very huge number. So picking from some of the other markets where the ILO exists, or some of the working models that have been used before, this one's for you, Mr. Mohammed. What can this country do to reduce the number of youth who are not in employment, not in education, and also not in training? What we would call the idle youth. How can we reduce that number?
Yeah. So before I answer to your question, let me just say two words from some of the elements that have already been picked by my colleague here.
Yeah.
So I fully agree with him on the education deficit. This is extremely. If you just look at the recent labor force survey. Statistics surrounding the education and the attainment of qualification for youth, it's really, worrying. But I just want also to emphasize that while I don't want to deny the fact that, the Ugandan workforce does not have the sufficient level of skills required by the local market, as well as the international markets as well. But I also want to mention that, the issue is bigger than that when we talk about youth unemployment. And the issue is that, the economy is unable to create sufficient jobs, for all people. So, and this is exactly what we call the jobless, growth. For instance, the Ugandan economy has been growing impressively, but it has not been creating sufficient jobs for all the people. So, if we start skilling up people while there are no employment opportunities in the labor market, then you just prioritizing the queue. You are bringing someone who was in 50 to 15th so that he accesses those small number of employment opportunities available in the labor market. So I fully agree with him that we need to have to
increase the skilling. Increase
the skilling, but also support. The demand side of employment, which is how should we create job-rich? How should we stimulate job-rich economy in Uganda, so that whenever we have youth with necessary skills, then they go to the market and then they find, employment opportunities. When you look at the net, those who are not in employment, nor in education or training, the last labor force survey has also provided some statistics. For instance, the national national level statistics says that the 41% of the youth are neither in employment nor in education or training. And what does that mean? That means that like 40% of the youth in Uganda are unemployed and they are not in education. So this is,
it's a huge number. That's about 3.8 million youth.
Yes, it's a huge number. So, and this number is always, is the best measure for the current, universe of the potential labor force that are not, exploited or employed, in the labor market. And if you just, dig it deeper and see, for instance, the female rate of the net, it's 51%. What does that mean? That means also, a lot of, women are involved in household chores, and they don't, go to the schools. They don't go to workplaces. So, you also see that, the labor markets are not also providing equal treatment to women as well. And then, if you also look at the geographical, variations, you can also see that there are specific regions that have got a higher rate of net, which means that there are limited training and employment opportunities in that region compared to other regions, for instance. So, some of the regions, it reaches up to 63%, which is extremely, high. So now, the net is only one of the two target indicators for SDG 8.
Yes.
So, and we are already midpoint between 2015 when SDGs were developed and established, and 2030
when we hope to achieve them.
When we hope to achieve.
Yeah.
So, honestly, we're not very optimistic about that, but I think there are a number of issues that the government can do. Number one is just to reduce the number of youth leaving the schools, because it's also very high.
That's very high, but it's also very hard.
Yes, it's also very hard. And the issue is not only, the children are dropping out of the schools, but, it will have a long-term repercussion on their, potential employment opportunities in the future. So that is, the key issue. Because at the end of the day, if we don't keep them now in the schools and then we don't give them the necessary, skills, they will be inactive or unemployed, moving forward. And then the second issue is that for those who have already received or achieved a sufficient level of skills and education, how should we integrate them into the formal labor market? So that's a major issue. So I think the government should take, the government plus employers and the workers' organizations should adopt more bold, audacious, and decisive policy actions, which will bring a lot of youth into the labor market. And most of the policies usually do, they activate, the youth so that they gain, relevant labor market skills. And I think the other issue, which is also a major issue in Uganda, is, the linkages between education and the labor market is also extremely weak. So, for instance, if you also look at the statistics, you will see that for skilled Ugandans, they are more unemployed than unskilled. Why? Because, some of the skills are not required by the labor market. So I think unless we, try to harmonize, what's being taught in the school and what is being needed or required in the labor market, then, the skill mismatch will always remain there.
Yeah. And this serves further to amplify what Dr. John said about understanding the needs of the labor market first.
Exactly.
And then now we translate it, like you've advised, into what we're teaching in the schools. Now, it's estimated by 2030, of course, by population trends and also tying into the SDG and when we're hoping to achieve them. It's estimated that by 2030, Africa is going to be host to the biggest percentage of young people. And this, of course, in contrast with Europe, that has a reduced percentage of the working age population, which creates a solution, a partial solution to our problem of not having enough employment here for our skilled labor and our youth. Do we have an opportunity as Uganda to benefit from such a global opportunity? And how can we as Ugandans, with the current picture of projections, how can we prepare for such a global opportunity?
Yeah. This is a very interesting question. I think the fact is that, if you just look at the demographic, statistics, all of them indicate that in the short, medium, and the long term, there will be a supply of human capital or supply of labor, in Uganda. But the question again is, do they have the necessary capacities? So I think the government of Uganda has already taken a number of actions which promotes, I mean, the creation of better and more employment opportunities for youth. For instance, I mean, I know, for instance, the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development has been working on the formulation of national employment strategy, which primarily focuses on specific target groups. Because the problem with, I mean, the youth is that the youth are so diverse. I mean, they have got different experiences, they have got different needs. So you cannot collapse them into one and say, oh, they are one, and we have to have one single policy that addresses all their needs. So, for instance, I mean, the government has already taken, I mean, that direction, at least to have a government-wide, I mean, policy orientation to address the increasing youth unemployment in Uganda. And I think you don't find these, I mean, in many countries in Africa where, I mean, you have got a national employment policy and then you have got, I mean, a national employment governance framework which brings together a range of government institutions, and then you have a national employment strategy with clear, I mean, action plans and indicators to be achieved. And one of these indicators is to reduce and lower, I mean, the youth unemployment. And then the second issue, I mean, again, is the which I also believe is critical, is the statistics. Because, you know, if you just look at the previous national development plans and other, I mean, national policies, I mean, it was difficult to find, I mean, a more relevant, I mean, statistics so that, I mean, which allows the government and the social partners, the workers, the employers, at least to design coherent policies. And one is those policies are designed, then they have to be monitored. And if you don't have the statistics, it will be difficult for you to, I mean, to monitor them. So I think we have to also we have to appreciate the fact that the Uganda Bureau of Statistics have been working hard, I mean, on the production of quality statistics to inform government policies and planning processes. And as far as I know is that, I mean, following the publication of the National Labour Force Survey, I mean, the Bureau is going to further work on thematic reports. One of them will be, I mean, youth activities, youth employment, which will provide all the statistics in one paper, but they will also engage other policy makers, including the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, not only to, have the statistics, but also provide some policy recommendations. I think it was one of the Athenian philosophers who said that, only statistics, good numbers will not bring good decisions, but good knowledge will be critically important to
making the decisions.
In making those decisions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Mr. Mohammed has talked about something that's very critical and passed the ball back into your court. When you talk about policies, in Uganda, we've been celebrated very many times for things like our entrepreneurial spirit as Ugandans. And with things like that, it's difficult to reconcile that with the fact that the unemployment rate is so high in youth, especially considering just how entrepreneurial our community is, our population is. So how is the country promoting development-oriented policies, especially those that support things like productive activities like entrepreneurship, job creation, creativity, innovation? Because we could be our own solution with the right policies. How is the government doing that, especially when you talk about access to financial services?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And as people say, unfortunately, they usually say it cynically, that we are very good, we are very well endowed with policies. So definitely, we have no shortage in that area.
Yeah.
Now, our challenge is to move beyond policy to action. Okay. And that's where we usually fail. Now, in terms of policy, we implement policies, and as Mohammed has elaborated, we are doing very well. But now, the problem, in fact, another harrowing statistic is that Uganda has one of the highest mortality rates for enterprises. most of our enterprises, it has been found, die within 1 year of starting. Now, why is that? Some of these reasons are structural, others are, innate to the people doing the business and so on. So we really need to approach or to tackle those issues, boldly. So to answer your question, this entrepreneurial spirit in and of itself is not sufficient. It is critical but not sufficient. It has to be nurtured and it has to be supported. So you've talked about employment, as rather financial access. Now, you find that our financing institutions are very, very unfriendly. We don't have the kind of capital that entrepreneurs need. You need what the World Bank president, one World Bank president called patient or lazy capital, where people will lend and not come tomorrow to say, where is my money? You need long-term credit. We don't have that. So we need to cultivate that into our policies, into our strategies, to say now, okay, these people with very good entrepreneurial ideas, how do we support them over a long time or a long period? So that would reduce the pressure on the young enterprises to make a quick turnaround, to make a quick gain, because good enterprises don't break even for, let's say, 3, 4 years, 5 years. But when they do break even, then they are solid. And that is what we should, that's the kind of spirit we should cultivate into our young people. That when you build an enterprise, it's not to give you a salary tomorrow and then support your clan and the next day and so on. But you go in for the long haul.
Which would be supported if we had long-term capital.
Yeah, long-term
because if I'm not under the pressure
financing.
to pay back or to give back, it helps me then to be patient and wait for the business to grow.
Exactly. So however much skill we give them, if we don't have those whom we give entrepreneurial skills, if we don't have that kind of patient capital financing, we are just wasting time.
Is that a solution that the country can provide?
Oh yeah, very easily. Now we have institutions like, I don't know whether some people will take offense, but institutions like NSSF, can lead the way into this patient capital financing. Because, from what I hear, that is one of their specialized areas, long-term financing. And then we now have stock market. We should train, educate our young people on how do you mobilize capital from the stock market. Give them those skills. We can also have investment clubs, where you bring people with money, but they don't know what to do. It's part of the patient capital. We don't know, they don't know what to do with it, but they don't have an immediate use for it, and they want to invest it. So they can invite, these young entrepreneurs, these young inventors, innovators, and so on, and they present their ideas. And then these potential investors, they buy into those ideas, they support them, they give them the startup capital, and then, they start off. And those types of enterprises are good in that they will not only support the entrepreneurs themselves, but they will create jobs. As Mohammed said, we are experiencing jobless growth because we don't entertain those ideas, big ideas of enterprises, which will be open to creating jobs. And of course, to accompany that, we need a supportive tax regime as well. Now, for example, another issue here, which is also unfortunate, is that access to the internet is becoming, very, very hard. There are so many bottlenecks, I understand the tax regime on the internet, services, and it's also prohibiting. And yet, most innovators today, who are the majority of whom are young people, their base is the internet. but they don't have the kind of money to support long, existence on the internet just to do innovation and so on.
Forgive me if I missed it, Dr. Ssekamatte, but I think that still comes back on you. When we talk about internet and infrastructure and being able to provide that, I think that's back to you as the government. Okay, so how can young people sustain investments if the country is to reap the demographic dividend?
Yeah, now I'm very glad that you bring up that term, demographic dividend. Because the demographic dividend is essentially built on the young population, not only of today, but of tomorrow and the day after. So, if we treat these young people properly, both in terms of education, in terms of their health, but also in terms of promoting sustainable skills, then the country will be on a path to reaping the demographic dividend. And when we say sustainable skilling, you see one of the problems we have with our skilling programs in Uganda is that we tend to specialize too early, and we specialize ourselves out of the market. So that you have a skilling program for plumbers, you have a skilling program for electricians, and so on. So if there are no electrical jobs, the guy is unemployed. Mm-hmm. If there are no plumbing jobs, the guy is unemployed. So we need a program or a strategy where we train a cadre of, let's call them scientists or engineers, but who can be trained and retrained as the need arises.
With a broader spectrum of skills.
Exactly. So that what they have is not a specialized skill which fits them into only one small pigeonhole, but rather a broad spectrum that can make them access or enable them access trainings and retrainings in a whole array of engineering jobs.
Make them more versatile, so to speak.
Exactly.
Okay, so today's conversation is linked to the Sustainable Development Goal 8, which is economic growth, employment, and decent work. If we're being honest and having an honest conversation, is Uganda in a position to achieve the SDG Goal 8 target of substantially reducing the proportion of youth not in employment, education, or training? Is this a practical target for us?
No, I don't think it is a practical target. And I think, if you just globally, it's not something is particular or special to Uganda, but it is a phenomena which is shared by many, countries in the world. For instance, if you just look at the recent statistics, there has been a significant progress made between 2005 and 2019 regarding the reduction of the youth who are neither in employment nor in education or training. But the COVID-19 has reversed, the process that has been made in the last 15 years. We are also in an era where there are confluence of crises which has negatively and adversely affected the attainment of of targets related to those who are not in employment, education or training.
Well, is there a way we can accelerate our ability to achieve this target, and of course taking into consideration COVID and all of the steps back that it made us have to move? Is there a way we can still, what can we improve, what can we change to be able to achieve these targets?
Yes, I think there is a way. If there is a will, there is a way.
Of course.
Now the major issue is that, when ILO wants us to provide some advisory support to governments, we holistically, view the economy as one. And for instance, as has already been mentioned, when you want to, improve employment opportunities for specific groups, whether they are youth or women or people living with disabilities. I mean, you need to look at the economy first, because you have just mentioned, I mean, the impact of the financial sector and the macroeconomics on the employment, for instance. I mean, if you go to America, for instance, the central bank, the Reserve Bank of America, one of its key functions is to, I mean, create jobs or maintain jobs for people. But in many African countries, I mean, the financial institutions do not have that mandate. Their mandate is just to stabilize, I mean, the macroeconomic. So our approach is always to see, look, I mean, we have to think about the macroeconomic, imperatives, which includes also investment and rates, conducive investment environment. And then we have to also make sure that, I mean, those macroeconomics are also linked to sectoral, interventions, meaning education, industrialization, ICTs, and then we have to also, also bring those two major macroeconomic and sectoral elements into the labor market as well. So, I mean, they are like, an integrated mechanism with the objective of, promoting employment, for all people. But, now, given that, we don't have a lot of time, to achieve or substantially reduce those who are not in employment, education, or training, and then we are also in crisis. I think, ILO has also been doing some innovative thinking on this, and we were saying, look, let's just think about, sectors that has got the biggest potential impact, the biggest potential for creating jobs for youth. I think there are specific sectors that are not heavily invested in Uganda and Africa as well, but can dramatically provide substantive jobs to youth, and this includes, for instance, green economy, care economy, digital economies, and all those sectors that are not yet harnessed. So with this growing demographic dividend, then we have to think out of the box and see how can we expand the sectors that are more lenient towards creating jobs for those youth. And then back to the education sector, I think it is a bit tricky or difficult to ensure linkages between labor markets and education. But and I think there is always this they're not harmonious, they're not complementary to each other, and that's where the problem lays. So I think that should be a major, policy for the government. In many countries in Asia, they have already, improved their education, skilling, and learning system, but now they're also anticipating the future skills, demand for the labor markets. So I think ILO can also provide some of these support services to the government, so that we should also think about the future, because the world of work is dramatically changing. And if we don't, as we have said before, the jobless growth, one of the key elements of jobless growth is that we were thinking that as the economy grows, there will be jobs. But the evidence shows all the opposite. So, jobs have to be planned for. They have to be, resources.
There has to be a deliberate effort to plan for them.
Absolutely, yes.
Great. Thank you so much. We've had very important conversations. Hopefully, we'll have just as critical meetings for us to find solutions and align all of these, because, like you've said, where there's a will, there's a way. It's been a wonderful conversation as we talk about being able to create decent employment and positioning young people in a world of infinite possibilities. And I'm hoping that we will be able to achieve this. Thank you so much. A special thanks to you, Dr. Ssekamatte, a consultant with the National Planning Authority, and of course, Abdel Malik Mohammed, who is a labor economist at the International Labour Organization here in Uganda. Thank you so much for joining me. We continue to celebrate a world of 8 billion, which is a world of infinite possibilities. Kitui Flo is my name. Thank you for watching.
Welcome to the Living Room Stadium. It's the FIFA World Cup. The match is about to start. Food and drink ready. There's no space left for anyone. Come on, get your lucky chair. Take your usual spot. Even the puppy has one. It's preparation time. You can feel the tension in the air. And do you have everything you need to believe?
Hotel La Confidential presents Dr. Jose Chameleon. Featuring Freeboy, Queen G, and Black Harmony. Come have fun with us on the 17th of December 2022. General tickets go for 10,000 shillings, VIP for 20,000 shillings, and a table of 5 for 500,000 shillings. For reservations, call
The Advocates Coalition for Development and Environment, ACCORD, and Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, CSBUG, in partnership with the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development and the Parliamentary Committee on Finance, are organizing a high-level policy dialogue on the economy under the theme, Leveraging Economic Inclusion and Regional Trade Amidst Tight Budgets in East Africa. The dialogue seeks to explore opportunities presented by regional integration and suggest policy actions for jump-starting Uganda's economy inclusively and sustainably. The meeting is scheduled to take place at Protea Hotel Kampala on December 14th, 2022, starting at 8 a.m. up to 2 p.m. and will be televised live on NBS television and on Accord Facebook page. You may follow the conversation on the hashtag ESC Inclusive Budgeting. Attendance is strictly by invitation.
Brusso Ventures, in partnership with NBS, presents the Ssekamatte Festival. Culture meets art, art meets music, and music meets vibe. We're breaking borders. Are you ready for Ssekamatte? Ssekamatte is an unbeatable experience of music, food, dance, fashion, culture, and art of two uniquely beautiful countries. Kigali meets Kampala, happening this 17th of December at Lugogo Cricket Oval. Come witness what happens when heritage meets fun. Sponsored by Brusso Ventures, NBS, Rondair, Safe Border, Movit Products, UTB, UWA, and Jude Color Solutions.
You know why Fanta goes really great with snacks? Because just like Fanta, snacking is colorful. Snacking isn't formal, which means no knives and forks. You don't even need to book a table for snacking. In fact, you don't need a table at all. Snacking is comfy and playful. Snacking is a tasty treat. That's why snacking is colorful. Snack with Fanta.
Feel like a little Waikibenda? Noaji on Tare? Then open your Afro mobile app, go to options section, select radio, find the station that best suits your current mood, click on it and enjoy live without missing a beat. Take a piece of home with you, anywhere and anytime. Afro Mobile. The future is now.
Program lineup brought to you by Gatawo with MTN Momo Advance. Dial star 165 star 5 star 3 hash to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.